Not every fall begins with rebellion. Some begin with a choice that seems intelligent, a strategic decision, a logical move. Lot did not choose sin. He chose prosperity. The problem. The text says that both of them were wealthy, large flocks, servants, gold, silver. But prosperity can also create conflict. The shepherds began to argue. The land became too small for two blessed men. Sometimes blessing requires separation. And there they stood. Abraham, the patriarch, and Lot, the nephew who had grown up in his shadow. Abraham could have chosen first. He had the right. He had the authority. He had the promise. But he lets it go. If you go to the left, I will go to the right. If you go to the right, I will go to the left. He hands over the choice. And in that moment, destiny changes direction. The text says something simple. Then Lot lifted up his eyes. But that detail is profound, because what we lift our eyes to behold often becomes what we desire to possess. He looks at the plain of the Jordan, green, well-watered, fertile. It was like the garden of the Lord. Like Egypt, it looked like guaranteed prosperity. It looked like effortless growth. It looked like security. But there was a line almost hidden in the narrative. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners before the Lord. The soil was fertile, but the culture was corrupt. And here lies the dangerous silence of the text. Lot does not ask. Lot does not seek counsel. Lot does not discern. He calculates. Perhaps the conflict was not only in the land. As he looked at that green, well-watered plain full of possibilities, it did not seem like a wrong choice. Though it seemed strategic, perhaps he thought, I can stay close without getting involved. I can take advantage of the opportunities without absorbing the values. I don't need to live inside the city. I learned from Abraham. I know who I am. Perhaps he believed that maturity meant immunity. That proximity did not mean contamination. That living among them did not mean becoming like them. But decisions rarely begin as rebellion. They begin as excessive confidence. Confidence in one's own strength. Confidence in one's own character. Confidence in one's ability to resist. And this is how the mind works. It does not see danger. It does not see spiritual risk. It does not see cultural influence. It sees advantage. It sees economic growth. It sees territorial expansion. But proximity shapes. And perhaps the greatest danger was not in Sodom. Perhaps it was in Lot's silent certainty that he would never be shaped by it. The text does not say that he entered immediately. It says he pitched his tents toward Sodom. Toward. That implies progression. Day after day, a little closer. The distance slowly shrinking. At first it was only the sight of the city. Then he could hear its sounds. Then he could feel its atmosphere. Until proximity became permanence. Not every fall begins with rebellion. Some begin with advantage. It doesn't start with declared sin. It starts with convenience. It starts with a choice that makes sense, but ignores direction, because it's not just about where you are. It's about where your tent is pointed. While Lot slowly descends into the plain, Abraham remains in the mountains. One chooses elevation. The other chooses abundance. In the mountains, the air is thinner. The path is harder. The soil is less generous. But it is there that altars are built. It is there that the voice of God echoes clearly. It is there that heaven feels closer to earth. In the plain, everything is easier. The ground is level. The The water is abundant. Growth is visible. Mountains require faith. Plains offer opportunity, and not every opportunity is purpose, because purpose is not always what grows the fastest. Sometimes it is what deepens invisible roots. Not every fertile land is a place of peace. Not every productive soil is safe ground for the soul. The plain promised expansion, but the mountains preserved direction. Lot did not choose Sodom. He chose what looked like growth, what looked like progress, what looked like a smart strategy. He chose what made sense in the present. But direction determines destiny, because decisions do not merely take us to places. They set us on trajectories, and some decisions do not look like sin. They look like vision. They look like boldness. They look like maturity, until time reveals what the eyes did not see, until advantage exposes its hidden cost, until the chosen direction unveils the true price. There comes a moment when corruption is no longer tolerable. The wickedness of Sodom is no longer merely cultural. It becomes structural, widespread, normalized. What was once an individual choice becomes a collective atmosphere. And then the text says something solemn. God decides to judge Sodom, not out of impulse, not out of whim, but because the outcry of the city had risen to heaven. The accumulated injustice, the repeated violence, institutionalized perversion. There comes a point when sin is no longer merely practiced, it becomes celebrated. And when evil is celebrated, judgment draws near. As judgment draws near, Abraham once again ascends to the place of intercession. He does not negotiate out of self-interest. He intercedes for mercy. If there are 50 righteous, 40, 30, 20, 10. He persists. He pleads. He appeals to the righteous character of God. But the silence of heaven reveals something even more severe. There were not even 10. And then the camera shifts. Lot is no longer in the plain. He is no longer near the city. He is inside. More than inside, he is seated at the city gate, a place of authority, a place of influence, a place of decision. The man who once pitched his tent towards Sodom now belongs to its very structure. Proximity has become belonging. Then the angels arrive, not with triumphant music, but with urgency. Get up, take your wife and your daughters. Leave this place. The command is clear. The threat is real. Time is short. But the text says something unsettling. He hesitates, even knowing judgment is coming. Even hearing the warning, even seeing the urgency, he hesitates. Why? Because roots create attachment, and attachment paralyzes. Sodom was not just an address. It was stability. It was investment. It was a network of relationships. It was a comfort zone. And leaving meant losing. There comes a moment when God does not only warn, he intervenes. The angels have to take him by the hand. It is not an invitation. It is a rescue. It is not a suggestion. It is mercy in the form of force. He is pulled out of the very place he once chose to approach. The man who voluntarily walked toward the city is now being dragged out of it. And the sky is already beginning to darken. The fire is about to fall. The greatest sign that something has become dangerous fares when you know you need to leave, but you still hesitate, because when sin becomes unsustainable, the choice is no longer comfortable. It becomes urgent. The night had already been broken by the urgency of the escape. Lot and his family run out of the city. Their steps are fast, their breathing heavy. The wind lifts dust along the path. Behind them, Sodom remains silent for a moment. as if the city were still breathing before judgment. The command had been clear. Do not look back, do not stop. Do not hesitate, do not cling to what was left behind. Because the past that God decides to judge cannot become the place where the heart returns. They keep running. The darkness of dawn begins to tear open, with a strange glow in the sky. Heavy clouds move over the city. Then it happens. Lot's wife slows her steps. Maybe only for a moment, maybe for one last look. Behind her were the familiar streets. The house that had been built, the neighbors, the entire life that had once been called home. Sodom was not just a place. It was history. It was memory. It was belonging. And the heart rarely abandons easily what it has grown deeply rooted in. So she looks back. It is not merely the movement of the eyes. It is the reflection of something deeper. It was not curiosity. It was attachment. It was longing for what was being left behind. It was a silent resistance to the rupture. While her feet were moving away from the city, her heart was still inside it. And in that moment, the judgment falling upon Sodom reaches her as well. Her body becomes motionless. The woman who looked back becomes a pillar of salt, a silent monument along the path of escape, an eternal reminder that it is not enough to leave Sodom with your feet. You must also leave it with your heart. Maybe you are not living in Sodom. Maybe your life seems organized, stable, secure. Maybe you have not crossed any visible line yet. But the question that truly matters is not just where you are. The question is, where is your tent pointing? Because decisions rarely take us directly into ruin. They place us on trajectories, silent trajectories, almost imperceptible at the beginning. Small movements, small concessions, small approaches, and no one wakes up one day in the middle of destruction by accident. Ruin almost never begins with a scandal. It begins much earlier. It begins in the direction we choose to follow, in what we allow to become normal, in what we decide to ignore, in what seems like only an advantage, because some choices do not look like sin. They look like opportunity. They look like growth. They look like wisdom. But direction always determines destiny, and some decisions that today seem merely strategic, tomorrow reveal the true price they carried.